So is Red still thinking about giving you the car, maybe?
So I've been watching a lot of That 70s Show since quarantine started. I grew up with the show. I've watched the whole thing from start to finish like a million times. It's something I can put on in the background while I do pretty much anything, like play games, draft this video essay, try to leverage my creative writing degree into an actual career. If you've never watched That 70s Show or forget the particulars, here's a quick rundown. That 70s Show is a period situational comedy that aired for 8 seasons from 1998 to 2008. It starred an ensemble cast of teenagers and adults as they navigated through the turbulence and color of the 1970s. It was so popular that many of the actors whose careers were launched by the show have never quite surpassed their time on it, regardless of how critically acclaimed their subsequent work ended up being.
The really weird thing is I didn't even know, because it wasn't called The 70s Show at that time.
Wasn't the Kids Are Alright? Or
Teenage Wasteland.
I imagine it's something like having your parents brag about a perfect attendance award you got in elementary school even though you're like 30.
Yeah. They're talking about a car that runs on water.
Even now, the show has a pretty great reputation, barring the universally reviled 8th season, which this video essay initially was going to be about.
I'd like it to say, hi, my name's Randy. I'm a fun-loving yet slightly naughty guy. The little boy in me's insecure, but the man in me's cocky.
I did a lot of research, which meant I went back and just rewatched the show in its entirety multiple times. But one of the more surprising things I realized with these multiple viewings is how little of the show ends up actually being about the 70s. To that point, That 70s Show is kind of dishonest. I know this sounds kind of weird. It's called That 70s Show. Everyone's listening to disco and driving station wagons and wearing bell-bottoms. How could it not be about the 70s? And if we were only talking about the first couple seasons, I'd be hard-pressed to disagree. In the first season alone, the gang goes to the disco, the guys obsess over Star Wars, Eric streaks at a Ford rally, and everyone deals with stuff like gas shortages and the sexual revolution. But after that, the whole show gradually shifts from its period trappings into a madcap teen sitcom that is really only incidentally set in the 1970s.
It's always fun o'clock in Funland. Hey, thanks a lot, you morons.
By the 4th season, the show is completely taken over by the Donna-Eric breakup and its fallout.
Hey. Hey? Is that all you have to say to me?
Leaving basically zero room for any 70s adjacent antics, aside from some random name dropping or shallow cultural reference, and it really just goes downhill from there.
Oh man, that could have been me!
Now, this isn't uncommon among TV shows, even for ones that are more sophisticated than a multicam sitcom. It just feels weird that a show whose core appeal is nostalgia suddenly no longer found the exercise particularly interesting. And realistically, That 70s Show never found this interesting to begin with. It's meant to be an idyllic theme park romp through the 70s, as evidenced by the simple fact that its first episode is set in 1976, more than halfway through the decade, and a full year after the end of, the Vietnam War, arguably one of the most influential events of the century, let alone the decade.
Follow me? Well, not really. I was a conscientious Canadian. Well, if you weren't...
It's obvious why the show focuses entirely on the experiences of white Midwestern suburbia in the 1970s, because that's what the showrunners experienced. But it's also obvious why the show focuses on and eventually gives way to its characters over dealing with the grittier, more uncomfortable parts of the 70s. It's just not as fun.
It's pretty super.
I don't fault That 70s Show for doing what it does. It's still a show I look fondly on, warts and all, and man, does it have so many warts.
That is just like a woman to bring that up.
But nostalgic media tends to try to sanitize points in history to get at the good stuff, which is just a nicer way of saying that nostalgic media lies.
Well, I said it, so it must be true.
The 70s were a time of incredible social and cultural upheaval, and while the show initially appears to understand this, it's clear by the end that this understanding was surface level at best.
I guess we'll just leave then.
Oh, that's not fair. You guys make leaving sounds.
I make this point to say that while it's important to look at what our media says about society and culture, it's just as important to look at what it chooses not to.
I like it. Kind of makes me wonder why God didn't just make us this way from the start. Don't worry, man. Evolution will take care of it.
For further reading, I recommend watching Stranger Things, It and the Upside Down of Nostalgia by one of my favorite YouTube video essayists, Lindsay Ellis, as well as her entire body of work. I'll link the video and channel below. If you'd like more period shows with ensemble casts, I recommend Freaks and Geeks, a comedy drama set in 1980 to 1981 that actually premiered the same year as That 70s Show and is almost nothing like it. It's also about a bunch of kids growing up in the suburbs, but it's a lot more grounded, so to speak. The show features a seriously amazing cast of actors who would later become really big, like James Franco, Seth Rogen, Jason Segel, Martin Starr. It's funny, and it's sensitive, and it's sad, and it was cancelled after its first season, which I'm still reeling over years after my initial viewing. Still absolutely worth the watch. It's maybe one of my favorite shows of all time. I recently rewatched it, and I'm tempted to do a video about it, but who knows. It was on Netflix a couple years ago, but unfortunately it's currently unavailable for streaming because of how much licensed music is in the show. Otherwise you can find it on DVD, on Amazon, or just figure it out. You have Google. I also recommend 1993's Dazed and Confused, directed by Richard Linklater. It's also a period comedy set on the last day of high school in Austin, Texas in 1976. It's a cult classic, so anything I could say about it has definitely been said before, but it's one of my favorite movies, and it's also on topic. Dazed and Confused follows a bunch of teenagers being teenagers to each other and kind of just cruising around looking for parties and occasionally waxing poetic about their futures. And that's it. There's no real overarching plot, and as a result, the movie is basically driven entirely by its characters, no pun intended. It's this really sprawling, affectionate love letter to both the 70s and to teenage malaise, and I absolutely adore it. It also has a huge ensemble cast of future stars like Matthew McConaughey, Ben Affleck, and Mila Jovovich. You can find it streaming basically everywhere. What I think Freaks and Geeks and Dazed and Confused offer relative to That 70s Show are more unfiltered and thoughtful trips back in time. Both works require a bit more engagement than anything with a laugh track, which isn't to say that there isn't space for simple entertainment, but I think we should always be asking for our media to engage us even a little bit more than is necessary. Thanks for watching.